Hi, I am Katina Horton, the Love and Freedom Toxic Relationship Recovery Coach. And today's Bible teaching is entitled 7 Ways You Know You Haven't Healed. Once again, today's Bible teaching is entitled 7 Ways You Know You Haven't Healed. And before I get into the message, I just wanted to remind you, right, that we do what? We wear a tie so that we can make an impact. That means we're always analyzing, troubleshooting, implementing, empowering, right? And impacting the women in our homes, communities, and around the world. And one of the easiest ways that we can do that is by hitting the like button and sharing this message with someone else that you know of who is interested in growing, right? Learning, growing, educating themselves, right? And being able to move forward in biblical healing and wholeness. And so, without further ado, I'm going to get right on into the Bible teaching. Now, when it comes to healing, healing is the process of mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, intellectually, and sexually and financially transforming your wounds into scars, right? And that means basically, right, a shorter version of the long story, short version of that, you get into the place that you're not bleeding out, right? Healing is a lifelong journey because some people say, oh, well, if you stop crying, you're not crying when you talk about it anymore, that means you heal. When you get to the place that you're not crying anymore, that means that you heal. And I don't agree with that because sometimes we just going to cry about something when we talk about it. It's a fact. It's a fact. We are just going to have to deal with certain things that we would normally have to deal with, right? And so part of what we would normally have to deal with would be what? Sometimes just crying, getting it out, right? Grieving and being allow grief in a certain aspect. I've heard of someone saying when we get a chance to know grief is becoming like another friend of ours, right? So crying is not necessarily an indication that you haven't healed from something. Sometimes you cry because it's tears of joy. Sometimes you cry because you reflect on the fact that look at where, look at what the Lord's brought me from. Look at what I've healed from, right? And now I can move forward from there, right? And so what happens is that by healing being a lifelong journey, right? That means we should ever be learning and growing in the knowledge, right, of the Lord, the knowledge and wisdom of the Lord, right? Taking that knowledge and applying it, that's when it becomes wisdom, right? And so, what happens as well when it comes to healing and not bleeding out, when you're at the point that you're not bleeding out on yourself and on to others, that's a good indication of knowing, okay, I'm ready to get to the point of thinking about dating again, entering the dating scene. I'm ready to get to the point of even moving up to the next level in my calling. Because what happens is our levels of our calling is actually connected to the levels of our healing, whether or not we want to believe that, but it often is. Like a lot of times when we're harboring unforgiveness, we're harboring offense, we're harboring bitterness, we're harboring anger, it can actually prevent us, along with us being betrayed by other individuals, it can prevent us from going to the next level of our calling, right? And so a lot of times when we think about healing, we think about it just like we like that figure of speech. Ain't nobody got time for that. But guess what? If we don't have time to heal, right? Healing is going to have time to try to catch up with us, right? It's going to run after us. As we're running away from it, it's going to be running towards us. Why? To let us know, right? Our body, mind, soul, and spirit has certain sensations, right? And feelings and emotions that's trying to run up and catch up with us and say, look, I need you to sit down for a minute. I want to talk to you about something, right? I need to break this down. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it, right? And you need to partner up with the Holy Spirit as the built-in comforter to be able to move yourself forward, right? Give yourself compassion, give yourself grace, give yourself empathy. We're so used to doing that when it comes to others, we forget that we often need it for ourselves, right? And so when we go through these prolonged states, a lot of times and don't heal, it can lead to things like a nervous breakdown, It can lead to things like being overly critical and judgmental of other people, being easily irritated, right? Easily angered. And that's because of the fact we've got residue left over. We've got that clutter that I talk about all the time. We've got clutter in our minds, bodies, souls, and spirit. And that clutter needs to be what? That excess of all of those areas, emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, spiritually, sexually, all of that and relational, all that excess clutter needs to be removed, right? So we can free up space in all of those areas and be healthier in all of those areas. And so that's not how healing works, as far as saying, ain't nobody got time for that. We gotta do what you gotta do. Every day, just get up and do what you gotta do. Yes, we do have to do what we have to do. We do have to go to work. We do have to run our business. We do have to run our ministry. We do have to go to church. All of those different things needs to take place, right? At the same time, we cannot sit and ignore the areas in our lives and in our minds, bodies, souls, and spirit that need to be dealt with, right? And need to be purged from our souls, right? And so what happens is that when we take when we decided we're going to go ahead and tackle it before it tackles us, like so to speak, as we get a ball and get somebody, you got a whole group of men tackling one man who's got the football before the healing and everybody else who's unhealed comes and tackles us. We've got to be able to tackle it, right? And when you go and heal, what happens is that you don't want to do what's called a $5 fill up. And if you've been listening to the channel long enough, you know a $5 fill up is just like going and putting $5 in your tank. Before you know it, you're going to be on empty. Your soul is going to be on empty once again, right? Your gas tank is going to be on empty, and you're going to end up right back at home plate, right? Home plate is back on empty. It's just like playing a board game, and then you thinking, hey, I'm about to win this, and next thing you know, you're going back to home. Somebody's other man has knocked you back, and then you've got to go right back to home. So that's what happens when we get the $5 fill up. And it's also equivalent to going to see the therapist just about like maybe one thing that's going on in your life, and you really need to go all the way back to the beginning and go under full construction. So the $5 fill up makes you think, oh, I'll just go about this thing. And then the next time something happens, oh, I'll just go and deal with this thing. But all of those little things are connected to the 1 to 3 or maybe even 5 things that happened to you in your childhood. You see what I'm saying? So that's the $5 fill up. And then you can go to the extent of going around the healing. And when we go around the healing, what we're doing is we see construction there. We feel like we're entitled. I ain't going that way. I'm just going to go on and go around it. But then when we go on, the Lord said, you're going to go around it. You're going to be back at home plate again. You're going to be back where your soul is empty, because once again, you didn't go what? You didn't go through the process. And going around it is you decide, yeah, I'm going to touch this a little bit, cry about this a little bit, do this a little bit, but you're just going to drive around. You're going to drive around the construction. When you heal, you have to go under construction. Remember, when a road, a highway, a road, a street, etc., is under construction, then what ends up happening is that that process often takes anywhere from a few months to several years. And it's annoying because you're sitting in traffic longer, you're rerouting, you got the cones on the highway, and that's how you are when you go under full construction to heal. That's how you are. The cone's going to be there. It's going to be signs along the way that's saying caution, right? It's going to be signs along the way to say be careful of the construction workers. You don't want to hit any of them. All of that is what goes on when you heal after narcissistic abuse, right? And so then what happens is that I want to just go right on into the healing part of our lesson, right? These 7 points, rather, the 7 ways you know you haven't healed. Point number 1, you fall for the same line you fell for from your last man, okay? You fall for that same line. In Judges 14 and 16, it says, and Samson's wife wept over him and said, you only hate me. You do not love me. You put a riddle to my people. You've not told me what it is. And he said to her, behold, I've not told my father and my mother. And shall I tell you? Then she said to him, how can you say I love you and you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength. You see what I'm saying? So the first one was his first wife. Okay. She was a Philistine woman. The second one was the words that Delilah said to him, and that was in Judges 16:15. right? So 2 times, 2 women told him the exact same thing. That lets you know that same line about you don't love me. The same exact line, right? 2 women told him the same exact line. So that means that what? There's something in his childhood that he heard or saw, probably from his own household, from his own mother, with his father, right? Or some other close relative of his. Something other went down where women were manipulating men like that and saying that same line. And he fell for it, right? Remember, we always go to those familiar spirits, right? And so once you think about it, when you were in the narcissistic abuse cycle, right? And you got the love bombing phase going on. And then what happened? He said, well, if you love me, you would just go ahead and go to bed with me. We're both Christians, and God know that He know we got needs going on. We could just seal the deal. And why did He want to seal the deal? He want to seal the deal because it's like not only has He gotten trauma bonded with you, right before this point of him saying this, but now He wants to be bonded by a soul tie, right? So he can move on quickly. He's tired of wearing that mask, that love bombing mask of being a person that he's not. He's ready to move on to the devaluation stage of belittling you, manipulating you, triangulating you, being filled with toxic envy, toxic jealousy, chaos, confusion, trauma, drama, codependency. And then if this is a covert narcissist, what he likes to do is isolate you from the people you love. He's not going to say, I don't want you hanging out with your mama and your sister and brother. I don't want you going over your grandmama's house so much. I don't want you talking to Susie and Barbara and Joanne and Martin. He's not going to say that. What he's going to do is what? Just talk about them, devalue them, right? Devalue every person, place, thing, right? Or idea / concept of yours to get you to isolate yourself. The next thing you know, you're going to be thinking, man, I'm not even talking to them, but I don't even know why. You see what I'm saying? That's covert. It's very, very sneaky. It's undercover. Think of it as being stealth, as is spoken of in the scriptures where they talk about the false prophets, even where they talk about how they're stealth over in Jude, right? And so instead of them saying, I don't want you to go to that church, I don't want you to talk to your family. No, he's just going to talk about your pastor. Then he's going to talk about the people on the usher board. And he's going to talk about the choir members, right? He's going to talk about the deacon board. He's going to talk about the finance committee, every committee, any and every person, starting with the head leadership on down till you get to the point you're not going to want to go to that church anymore. That's what he's going to do, right? You're going to give up your membership. Talk about your family so much, the next thing you know, you're not going to be talking to them, right? Number 2, the second way you know you haven't healed. You allow your partner to wear you down, to making a rash decision like a child wears down his parents, right? So think about this. In Judges 14 and 17, it says, she cried the whole 7 days of the feast. So on the 7th day, he finally told her because she continued to press him. And this is talking about Samson's first wife. So she just kept crying and crying and pressing him and pressing him and pressing him and grieving his spirit until he did what? Until he told her, right? And then even in Judges 16 through 17, well, guess what happened? Once again, from unhealed Samson, Delilah did the same thing. It says, with such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. Now, you know, that's got to be a lot of pride. It's got to be a lot of prodding going on if somebody have grieved your nerve to the point. And you know how it is. If you got kids, or you've even if you don't have any kids, you got nieces and nephews have been around some other kids. Let them keep asking you over and over and over again. I want a Happy Meal. I want a hamburger. I want to go to McDonald's. I want to go to Wendy's. And they keep doing it over and over again. And see what happens, right? You're going to be tempted to say, you know what? Let's go now. I'm so sick of your mouth, right? So that's what Delilah and even his first wife did, just kept wearing him down, right? And it says in Judges 16 through 17, with Delilah, said, with such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. So he told her everything. No razor has ever been used on my head, he said, because I've been a Nazarite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. So he got sick and tired of hearing it. Sick and tired of it. Like I said, when that child is wearing your nerves and working it to death over getting some cookies or some candy or going to get a Happy Meal or whatever, and the next thing you know, you give them what they want, right? But that's the second way you know you're not healed, when you allow your partner, right, or any other individual to wear you down to making a rash decision like a child wear down his parents. Number three, the third way that you know you haven't healed, you get so angry that you start burning up stuff. Yes, once again, you get so angry, you start burning up belongings, right? Other people's belongings. That's number three. In Judges 16, 1 through 6, it says, later on, at the time of wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. And this is the first woman he was with, mind you. He said, I'm going to my wife's room, but her father would not let him go in. Now, this is a hot mess. This is Samson's wife. Her father is not letting her husband see her. I was so sure you hated her, he said. Yeah, that's right. Coming up with any old excuse. That I gave her to your companion. So her father, gives his wife to his friend. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead. And this is making me think about this deal that went down with Jacob and Laban giving Jacob the older sister, right? Instead of giving him Rachel to begin with. And he worked 7 years for Rachel, and he was bamboozled into getting Leah, right? And it says, Samson said to them, this time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them. So he went out and caught 300 foxes and tied them tail to tail in pairs. He then fastened the torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the shocks and standing grain, together with the vineyards and olive groves. When the Philistines asked, who did this? They were told, Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because his wife was given to his companion. So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. Now I want you to think about that for a minute. Her father gave her away, right? Samson's wife, to his best friend, right? His companion. And so in turn, Samson's so angry and not taking the time to try to heal, he took 300 foxes and let those foxes go and set them on fire and burned up, fastened the torch to every pair of their tails, and they burned up a whole field, right? And so then what ends up happening is that was a lot of damage. But this is the kind of thing that often happens when we're unhealed. Remember the movie Waiting to Exhale? And then you have the character Bernie, right? And so because her husband was leaving her and had done all kind of mess against her, right? Because of that, she figured she was going to get even with him. So she took all of his shoes, all of his clothes, put him in the car, went outside, smoked the cigarette, poured lighter fluid on the car, right? Then smoked the cigarette, puffed it a little bit, threw it over there, and then everything went up in flames. And as she was walking with her robe on, like, look at what I just did. So when you get to the point, you satisfied like that for the moment, but guess what? You might face jail time. Your kids might see you going to jail, unfortunately, right? All kind of crazy things can end up happening as far as you being charged with arson, all kind of stuff. When you're unhealed and you start getting to the point where you're burning up people's belongings, it's not a good thing, right? Burning his car, burning the house, right? Burning his clothes, right? Like I said, it's going to make you feel better temporarily, but then after a while, if your kids witnessing what you've done, right? Your testimony being tarnished, your character, even though you're hurting and in pain, you still burned up somebody else's stuff. You see what I'm saying? And might have damaged property along with it, right? And then in 2 Samuel 14, 29 through 33, it says, then Absalom sent for Joab in order to send him to the king. But Joab refused to come to him. So he sent the second time, but he refused to come. Then he said to his servants, look, Joab's field is next to mine, and he has barley over there. Go and set it on fire. So Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab did go to Absalom's house, and he said to him, why have your servant set my field on fire? Absalom said to Joab, look, I sent word to you and said, come here so I can send you to the king to ask why have I come from Geshur. It would be better for me if I was still there. Now then, I want to see the king's face. And if I'm guilty of anything, let him put me to death. So Joab went to the king and told him this. Then the king summoned Absalom, and he came in and bowed down with his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. So even though all of that had occurred, Absalom got what he wanted. Joab went to the king, and the king found and said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and see him. So even though he got what he wanted, guess what? That was an emotionally immature means. Anytime we use something as sick as burning up a field to get somebody's attention, it's emotionally immature, right? It's deceptive. It's manipulative, triangulative, all of it, right? All of that is going on when you go ahead and tell somebody else to burn it up, or you burn it up yourself and figure, I bet this gonna get his attention. That's what children do. When you're on the telephone and then they keep coming to us, I got something to do, and you telling them, I'm be off the phone if you whispering, you're giving them toys, you're putting the program on, you're trying to get your bills paid, and they just keep on mama, 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 daddy, 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 mama, 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 and you trying to take care of whatever, and then the next thing you know, they figure, okay, they're gonna pay attention to me now. The next thing you know, they've done some disastrous stuff. They got Vaseline packed on from head to toe all over their clothes. They've gone into all your products. You've got a hot mess going on when a child is deciding that they're just determined they're going to get your attention. But guess what? We're talking about a child. This was a grown man. Absalom was a grown man who sent another man, his servants, to go burn up another man's belongings and possessions, right? And so when we get to that point, we know we haven't healed. When we're burning up people's stuff to get their attention, we know we haven't healed. And so like with Absalom, for example, he was a narcissist. Unfortunately, he had that spirit of narcissism running through him, and he was enslaved to that spirit, right? And so what happened, because he did not heal from whatever was going on between him and what? His mother and his father, whatever went on in that childhood, your family's love story garden that goes untouched, right? Whatever deficiencies that were there or perceived deficiencies that were there that you did not take the time to heal from, then we'll be going around burning up other people's fields and thinking it's okay and temporarily feeling good about it. But it's nothing good about burning up somebody's stuff to get their attention. Number 4, the fourth way you know you haven't healed, you go around name calling when it comes to men. Your friends end up being afraid to have you around their children because the next thing you know that's coming out your mouth, you're saying, you know what, all men, they number dogs anyway, they all dogs. And then you're calling them every other name in the book. And it's gotten so bad that it's just toxic. And they're afraid for their kids to hear. You see what I'm saying? It's particularly their daughters, because of the fact that it's like, okay, well, if that's all she's hearing, you know what I'm saying? I don't want her going around thinking that about men. I don't want her going around internalizing this about men. You see what I'm saying? I don't want her picking men with that internalization process going on. I don't want this to be excess clutter in her soul, right? And in scripture, it says, before sunset on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him, what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? Samson said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. And so you see what I'm saying? By him actually devaluing his wife, calling her a heifer, and that's just unbelievable. So that there had to be some unresolved trauma, undealt with brokenness there, and some vulnerabilities that led to him calling his wife that, right? Yeah, he's mad because he found out, yeah, she done betrayed me. But the fact that you got a name call your spouse, your partner, your friend, your brother, sister in Christ, not good, right? Number 5, the 5th way you know you have not healed, your type alignment is a higher priority than your value alignment. And then the thing about it is that you never even stop to ask yourself, what are my values? What do I value? You see what I'm saying? You came up with a type, and then you what? You took it and ran with it. In Judges 14, 1 through 2, it says, Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. Wow, that was very, talk about being imperative right there. I mean, he wrote, like, commanded them, this is what I want you to do. Go do it, right? And then in Judges 16, 1, then Samson went to Gaza and saw there an harlot and went in unto her. Okay. Then Judges 16, 4. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. So what was Samson's type? You might wonder, what was his type? What was he aligning to as far as his type? He liked the manipulative, deceitful, crying Philistine women. That's the kind of women he went for, right? The ones that satisfied his lust of the eyes and the lust of the flesh. The ones that looked seductive, right? He focused on the good looks, right? And the seduction, okay? And so think about it. He didn't think about the fact I want a woman of integrity, a woman of faith, a woman who's trustworthy, a woman who's bearing good fruit, a woman who is walking in purpose, a woman who honors, respects, and has dignity for herself, right? And with you, what happened? You got caught up in the good looks, right? You got caught up in his physique. You got caught up in all those material possessions he told you he had, right? The money, the houses, the vacations, all of the property and real estate he owned, all the initials behind his name, right? And then what? As he's going out with you, he's flirting with the women, the cashiers in the stores, right? Flirting, you going to work functions with him. He's flirting with his side chicks who were initially functioning as co-workers, right? Smiling and grinning from ear to ear, gaslighting you with actions after telling you he wasn't affectionate, knowing that that's what he was doing during the love bombing. When he started devaluing you, well, you know I ain't affectionate anyway. That's why I ain't hugged and kissed you in a while, right? But then breaking his neck to hug his co-workers, kissing them on the cheek, making you feel uncomfortable, texting them on the cell phone and holding the phone back and looking a certain way and making you trying to manufacture the emotions of jealousy and whatnot, right? Gaslighting you by actions, right? Dog whistling, right? And then once you approach him about it, he's gaslighting you more. You just jealous and insecure. You had low self-esteem when I met you. Just any old mess to get you off target. But that's your type, right? The serial cheaters. The ones that the other type is part of the type is the same 3 requirements that Eve chose when selecting fruit from the Garden of Eden. It looked good for food, looked pleasing to the eyesight, looked like he'll make one wise. Okay, I'm gonna get him. And then you might have added good looks to it. You might have added material possessions to that list. You might have added, like I said, the real estate property. You might have even added, he looks like he might be good in bed. Just anything, right? Anything except lining up with your values, which means that you're doing what? You're sabotaging yourself. Number 6, the 6th way, you know you haven't healed. You keep hooking up with people who betray you. Judges 14:17 said, she cried the whole 7 days of the feast. So on the 7th day, he finally told her because she continued to press him. She in turn explained the riddle to her people. So he went on and gave in, told her the answer to the riddle after he already told her, I ain't told my parents, I ain't told nobody, I'm not telling you. He went on after she wore him down like kids wear their parents down, right? And then what did she do? She took that information and told her people. She betrayed him, right? Talk about betrayal. Then in Judges 16:20 through 21, it says, then she called Samson. The Philistines are upon you. He awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. Binding him with bronze shackles, they set him to grinding grain in the prison. And in Judges 16:5, right, that same chapter, it says, the rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, see if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so we may tie him up and subdue him. each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver. Talk about betrayal, right? Okay. And what happens is when somebody betrays you, 9 times out of 10, there's been a point where their countenance has changed. You chose to ignore it. You chose to ignore the promptings, your intuition, the promptings of the Holy Spirit saying, caution, something's going on here. They're starting to say things to you and something's not feeling right in your mind, body, soul, and spirit, but you just keep going on. Why? Because you've made an idol of the history of the relationship, right? And an idol out of whatever little value you're getting from them. Whatever the pluses are in the relationship, you've made an idol of it over your own self-respect, your own honoring of yourself, your own dignity, right? Your own love, self-love, right? So like I said, the countenance always changes before the drastic thing happened. Think about Judas with Satan entering him, right? Think about Cain. Think about Laban. Think about Saul. Think about the Pharisees' countenance changing with Jesus, right? And when the countenance changes, right, there is what? There is narcissistic injury 9 times out of 10 that has occurred. They were already who they were. Narcissistic injury just takes it to the next level, right? That's followed by narcissistic rage and or silence as they work on plotting to emotionally, mentally, physically, sexually, financially, intellectually, relationally, socially, all of those kill you. Okay? And so what happens is also 9 times out of 10, when you get betrayed, those people are narcissistic. And a lot of them are covert or either self-righteous cerebral narcissists / Pharisees / brood of vipers, as Jesus and John the Baptist called them, right? And also when their countenance changes, they look at you with contempt, very contemptuous, almost like this look of disgust, like I just can't even stand her. I can't even stand to see her, to look at her, for her to be in the same room with me. That's contempt, right? Just disgust, like, oh my gosh. You know what I'm saying? It's just unbelievable. This all happens prior to you being betrayed. Number 7, the final one, the final point. The 7th way you know you haven't healed. You fall asleep on the lap of or in the bed of the person who has a murderous spirit, right? And it says in the scripture after, and this is in Judges 16:19, after putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him, and his strength left him. She already had told him in the very beginning. She was straightforward. I mean, she was bold. She was an opportunist. She was bold. This was a transitionally soul-tied toxic relationship. Remember, transitionally supplied is basically you are there to serve the purpose of helping this person with the spirit of narcissism in them. You just there to help them to get over a major life transition. And hers was just getting banked. That was it, right? So she was a transitionally soul-tied supplied narcissistically abusive relationship. That's all that was, is what Samson was in, rather. I almost said Solomon. What Samson was in, right? And so she already told him, as soon as she met him, she told him what she wanted to do. Let me know how, where your strength is so I can subdue you. She already told him. So what do you do with that? If somebody already meets you and you're so caught up in the lust of the eyes and lust of the flesh, they're already telling you, like, I'm trying to bind you. Basically, I'm putting you in slavery so I can kill you. In all of those different areas, all the above. Like, you take a test, is it this, is this, is this, this is, or do you check off all above and all the above, all those areas? That's what I'm planning on doing to you. But you find yourself on their lap or in the bed, that's how you know you haven't healed, right? And so think about it. You've been shot at, possibly stabbed, choked, anything that could get to buck wild crazy, right? The trauma bond keeps bringing you back and allowing you to want to seek safety on his lap, right? Or in his bed. I hope there's something I said to you that's been of value. And like I said, once again, we wear ties so we can make an impact. We're analyzing, troubleshooting, implementing, empowering, and impacting the women in our homes, in our communities, and around the world, right? And the quickest way to do that, the easiest way to do that right now is to share this message if it's anything that's been of value to you today. Once again, I am Katina Horton, the Love and Freedom Toxic Relationship Recovery Coach. I love you, ladies. God bless you, men. And until next time, be blessed.